Well folks, RPG A Day Month is upon us. The veritable tsunami of RPG gaming positivity. I hope you enjoy it. Many of us podcasters will be chipping in with our thoughts, answering a range of questions once a day for the entire month. I will be combining my offerings into small chunks, 3 or 4 days perhaps, maybe more. We'll see how it goes. Hope you enjoy. Question 1. Who would you like to introduce to RPGs? I've been talking about introducing new players to RPGs recently on the podcast, and my thoughts haven't really changed on this one. It's going to be kids every time for me. I don't really run into a vast amount of adults that I can visualise playing RPGs. Occasionally I do, but I'm going to focus my attention on year 7s. So we're talking about the age range about 10 to 11. Now ideally I would like to see a good cultural mix of kids, girls and boys, and really if I could get those kids that perhaps without RPGs would be getting themselves into trouble and mischief, or those that are kind of reluctant to read, so inspiring kids to do a bit more reading and break out the books, or even those who feel like they lack a bit of imagination, so kind of unlock the imagination, unlock the desire to learn and explore. Those would be my ideal RPG converts. I think the interest is there, particularly there are a good number of kids who like Marvel and anime. They seem to be the two main camps, so tapping into that seems quite possible, but we'll talk about that in days to come. Just to add to that, I wanted to also mention, some kids find it pretty difficult to make friends, and I think that group could be good candidates for RPGs. They've got something like the safety of an imaginary world where they can explore relationships and share a common interest. It's a bit of a trope, I guess, but I think it's a trope for a good reason. But that's it. I am actually done now. Question 2. What is a great introductory RPG? The answer to question 2 is a tricky one for me. The games that I have used to introduce players, most recently I've used 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and in fact myself was reintroduced to the hobby through the 5e starter set. Whilst it's highly available, I believe a solid product, it's not necessarily the direction I would choose to head now. And casting my mind back to the 1983, to the immense red box of Dungeons and Dragons, the way he used a type of choose your own adventure to introduce potential players to the game, I thought was really effective. I've got fond memories of it, in the same way that I've got fond memories of the fighting fantasy books. Now, arguably, they are not actually an RPG. Could I recommend them? Are those things relevant to the kids that I've talked about in answering question 1? I'm not so sure. I think for that reason, I'm sticking with my idea of something like ICRPG from Runehammer Games, just because of its flexibility, the clean and kind of, I think, quite lively graphics that it's got there. It's got quite an arresting, bold visual style. The DIY spirit of ICRPG is something that for my kind of chosen audience of converts or neophytes, it's the kind of DIY approach to gaming that I want to encourage. That super creative, super productive, adaptable kind of thinking, where you're not tied into an IP and you're not tied in and being spoon-fed loads and loads of content. I think for the game to achieve what I want it to achieve, it needs to encourage that type of play, exploration, creativity, all those great things that so many RPGs do, of course, create. But for me, ICRPG it's just been so inspirational. Every time I read it, I want to go away and play something or do something, and that's, I don't quite know what it is about that book that does that. I don't know if it's the character of hankering coming through. Importantly as well, you've got a free starter set of rules that have got everything you need to play. So much GM advice in there as well. So for a novice GM, I think the support in the GM section and things about creating monsters, and also the support on like Hank's website, the forums, the YouTube videos he puts out there. Big names like Dungeons and Dragons have got way more of that stuff, but at a certain point maybe that becomes a little bit counterproductive. And one thing you'll find with D&D as well, you have got a lot of people telling you that this is how you should do this and this is how you should do that, whereas with ICRPG it's not like that. I've not encountered that, because it's maybe there's just much less of the content and it's a bit more niche, and hankering, as I say, has got this real flexible approach that can only be a good thing in my mind as well. If I were introducing it myself, it allows me a great amount of flexibility to match the tastes of your target audience. Question 3. When were you first introduced to RPGs? And this classic question crops up time and time again. Pretty difficult to pin it down precisely, and I maintain that I was role-playing and playing role-playing games in the playground with my mates as soon as I started school, probably even before that. The trouble, of course, in them playground games, there was a lack of structure, and there would always be arguments about who was dead, who wasn't dead. You know, you're playing army in the playground, you're all shooting. How do you determine when someone's got to go down? Really, how different is that to the role-playing games that we know and love as adults? The first formal rule set, I would say, that I played would have been in around late 81 or somewhere around there. It was Moldvay Basic, and never really got into the expert set. It had morphed into a mashup of basic D&D and advanced D&D by the time our characters were of a level that the expert rules may have come into play, and I certainly never remember seeing them. My first experience of expert rules was with the BECME expert, the Mensa expert, and thoroughly loved those rules when they came along. Question 4. Where would you host a first game? Based on the fact that I'm looking to set up a school D&D club or gaming group, my options for where that will be located are limited. Within the school setting, of course, there is a little bit of latitude. I could do it in my kind of engineering department. I could perhaps look at setting something up in the library, or in one of the more regular classrooms. If it was at a lunchtime or after school, I could just find a vacant one and book it out. Chances are I'll stick with my own room. The advantage of that is I can have all my stuff to hand. I'm not going to be lugging things about. I'll be familiar with the setup. I've got the laptops in there. The kids have got the Chromebooks. Got the big Promethean board. It's probably the way I'd go, although in the library it would have a sort of a higher profile. It's in that kind of a little bit more of an academic environment, although it might be a bit too loud, could cause problems with other people using the library. So maybe try both, see how I go. It would be nice to kind of get a little bit of extra exposure, and I think the library would provide that. You'd run into a wider range of kids, I guess. So I guess thinking about location, focus on your aims. Is it exposure you want? Is it convenience? Is it the technology and the facilities? It's perhaps more to this than meets the eye. And there you go, that is a wrap. A big thanks goes out to the pit crew, the generous folks supporting my endeavours over on Spike Pit Patreon, and a big thanks goes out to you, the listener, for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to old Spike Pit. Take care, and I'll catch you later.